Hey, what's up guys? Back again with another C++ video. This time we're going to be doing a challenge video, or a practice video as you might call it. And so this is so that we can practice our skills that we've been learning recently. You know, if statements, while loops, do while loops, for loops, switch statements. We can practice that to get some, obviously, practice, and so that we can get the things that we learned stuck in our head so that we, just can remember it and build upon the concepts that we've actually been learning instead of having to just watch videos. Anyway, so let's get started here. What I'm going to do is basically show you this here that I made. It's a little challenge document. I'll leave this in the description below so you can check it out. And so after I'm done explaining this and reading this, I'm going to ask you to pause the video, and then you can try this challenge out. There's actually 2 challenges in this video, or practice programs, and so you can try both of them out. And then I'll say unpause the video, and then you could, and then I'll show the code for this. You know how you might do this. There's many different ways you could do programs, but this is all pretty simple at this stage, so there shouldn't be too much variations in what you can do. So anyway, along with this, my Discord channel that I have here, my Discord server that I have made for the YouTube channel. We have a bunch of developers in here, so you could join this if you want to. You could get some friends and stuff. We have about 700 people currently, and you can ask questions if you need help here. So you can join one of these channels here and just ask a question about C++, Java, Minecraft development, or you can join one of these challenges here. So this challenge that I'm showing you right now, this practice problem, this is actually going to be an ongoing challenge I'm running for my Discord server. So if you join my Discord server, you can get in on challenges like this to get some more practice. And then you can get rewards, like if you go to this guy right here, he has a challenge number 1 role because he won the first challenge, or he was able to complete it at least. So anyway, if you're interested in that, just join the Discord server, the link in the description for you, so check that out. But anyway, now let's get started here and we can give this a try. So the first program that we're going to be giving a try is going to be called the minimum maximum locator program. So what we're going to do is create a program that will ask the user how many numbers they want to store, and we're going to be storing those numbers in an array of integers. So after you ask for the number of how many integers they want to store in that array, what we're going to do is create the array, obviously, but also we're going to ask for those numbers. So for example, if they say 45, for the initial question, then we're going to be looping 45 times and ask for a number 45 times and put those numbers into the array. So yeah, you're going to use a loop for that, and then you're also going to be using a loop to basically, you're going to be finding the highest number in the array after you're done asking for all the numbers, and then you're going to store that variable, or you're going to store that highest value into a variable, and then you're also going to store the index in which that variable was found inside of. Okay, so in the array, you're going to have, let's say you have the highest number, you're able to locate it, and the number is 600. So what you want to do is store 600 into a variable, maybe called highest or something like that. And then you also want to store the index of where you found it inside the array. Okay, so maybe like 45 is the index, or I already used 45 as an example, so maybe 1. Okay, but you get the point. So just keep track of that, and then also do the same thing, but find the minimum number. So the first thing, you're going to find the maximum, then you're going to find the minimum, store those numbers in indexes, and then after that, you're going to report the values that you found. So you just have to let the user know what you found, what the maximum is, and what the index is. So at the bottom here, I have an example. You could say something like the maximum number was found in index 4 and is equal to 445 or 455. And then you could also do the minimum number was found in index 3 and is equal to 9 or something like that, right? And that's pretty much it for the minimum maximum locator program. So that's pretty simple. All you're going to be able to do, or all you should need to do rather, is use a if statement along with some loops. It doesn't matter what loop you use. You can use a while loop, you can use a do while loop, you can use a for loop. It doesn't matter, just as long as you complete the task. And so that's it for the first program. And then now we have the time to seconds program. So before we go on to the time to seconds program, I want you to pause the video and give this first program a try. And then after you're done pausing the video, you can come back and watch me solve it. Okay? So pause the video right now. Okay, so hopefully you paused it and you gave it a try. Hopefully you were able to solve it. It wasn't too hard, I hope. But anyway, let's go ahead and try this out. So I have a program here, an empty program at least. And what we want to do is first ask the user how many numbers they want to store, obviously, right? So we're going to make a cout statement for that. We'll say something like, how many numbers do you want to store? Right to the point. And then we're not going to have a inline on the end of that, so that, they can enter the input onto the same line as we're asking the question. And we're going to do cin, and then we need a variable to store their input inside of, so we're going to do int amount. That's a good name. So cin amount, so we're going to put that input into the amount of variable, and then now what we need to do is then loop however many times they entered, right? Because we're going to be asking for a number, obviously, right? So I think the best type of loop we can use for this is going to be a for loop. Because with the for loop, we can initialize a variable here, and so we have int I is equal to 0, and then we need to set a maximum value here, so that would be amount. So what that is going to do is loop 0 through 499. So it starts at 0, obviously, and then it's going to stop when it's I is equal to amount, because it increases as long as I is less than amount. So eventually when it reaches I is equal to amount, then it's going to stop, okay? So it should be 0 through 499. But if we were to do something like I is equal to I is less than or equal to amount, and then it's going to be 0 through 500, okay? Just making that clear. Anyway, so now for each iteration of this loop, what we want to do is say cout, let's say something like enter number, and inside of some parentheses here, let's have like the index that we're currently on, or the iteration, obviously, same thing, and we'll do I plus 1, so that's going to be what loop we're on, or number, and then we'll do this, like this, and then we'll say just like that. So that should say something like enter number 1 inside the parentheses, and then they can enter number 1, so cin number, and numbers, we're going to have this right outside over here. It'll be an integer. So after we grab number, we want to put it into the array to store it there, but we don't have an array yet, so let's do that. Let's just put this up here, and then we're going to go down here and make the array. So it's going to be an array of integers, so we're going to do integer for the data type, and then we can call this numbers, and then we need to specify a size. Since we're not going to be initializing it with any values until we get down here, we need to give it an initial size. So that size is going to be amount, so the number that they entered. So that would actually be right down here, because we don't ask for the initial number until we get to this part, right? Or the size. Anyways, that should be good for initializing the array. So now that we have the array, we can do numbers I for the index is equal to number. Let's add this, by the way. We need to have the angle brackets there. And what this loop should do is basically loop however many times they enter initially right here for the size. And then for each iteration of that loop, it's going to ask for a number and then store that number into the array. So that then we can go down here and find the maximum. And there's an easy way to do that. We need to, well, first we need a variable to actually store the maximum inside of, so int maximum, because in the instructions that we have here, it says to store the maximum that we find inside of a maximum variable, okay? So we'll do that integer maximum, and that'll be uninitialized for now, and then we want to do int max index, just like that. Alright, so the way that you usually find the maximum and minimum numbers inside of an array or in a list or something like that is what you want to do is initialize the maximum equal to the first index of the array. So we could do numbers 1, or 0 in this case because it's 0 based. And what that's going to do is set the first number inside of the array equal to the maximum, okay? And then we do the same thing for the index. So the index would just be 0, obviously. And then what we want to do is loop through the array, just kind of like we did up here. So loop through the array. And then for each iteration of that loop, we want to see if the maximum, or no, if the one that we're looking at, so numbers j, is greater than the maximum. So if the number that we're looping through on the iteration is greater than the maximum, that means that we want to change the maximum to the number that we just compared, right? Because it's obviously bigger than the maximum, so that's going to be the new maximum, okay? So we're going to do j for the index, okay? And then along with that, we also want to set max index, if I could grab it here, is equal to j, which is the loop, the iteration that we're on, starts at 0. This starts at 0 also, so they're perfect. Anyway, so again, let's explain this here. What this should do is basically, so we're going to be initializing the maximum equal to the first number in the array. So if it's like maybe 10, and then we're going to loop through the array, and then each iteration of the loop starting from 0, if that number is greater than the current maximum, then you're going to set the maximum equal to that number because it's greater, obviously, right? And then you're going to do the same thing for the index. You're going to set the index equal to the new index of the greater number. Alright? So hopefully that makes sense. And then it should be the same exact thing for the minimum. So find minimum, and so int minimum is equal to numbers 0, so the first one, and then integer min index for minimum index is equal to 0. And now we can just loop through it again. So k. And by the way, if you see that this is just appearing by itself, that's just because IntelliJ or CLion, the IDE that I'm using, is able to automatically generate a for loop for me, so that I can use it faster, I guess you could say. So then again, we're just going to put the amounts so we know how many times to loop. And then for each iteration, what we want to do is compare it. So if the if the numbers k, so the number that we're on in the iteration, is less than the minimum number, which is going to be the first one by default, then you want to set the new minimum by doing minimum is equal to numbers k, just like that. And let's set this to numbers, not number. And then we could do min index is equal to k, so that's going to be the index. And so that's basically the same idea behind the maximum. Instead is the difference is that we're comparing on each iteration to see if the number that we're looping through is less than the current minimum, and if it's less than the current minimum, we're going to reset the minimum to the current number, and so on until it reaches the end of the array. Okay, so now that we have the maximum and the minimum, we can then report it to the user like it says in the instructions. So we'll say something like this: cout with the maximum number was found in index, and then just provide the max index, and is equal to min maximum, just like that. So that should be it in line. So let's read this again. So the maximum number was found in index 4 and is equal to 45. That's just an example, obviously. And then we can do the same thing for minimum. So minimum number was found in index, min index, and is equal to minimum, just like that. So that should do that for us. So let's give this a try. So we have a compilation error here. It says that we cannot, it basically says in the error message here that we cannot use a regular variable to initialize an array, which is something I actually forgot about or didn't realize. So we need to make a change here. I made a change to the instructions here. I said that you can either use an array or you can use a vector, because you can also use something called a dynamic array in C++. So we have not learned that yet, so we're not going to do that. What we're going to use is a vector. So if you haven't seen my vector video in the C++ series, then go ahead and watch that. It's, I think, episode 23. So yeah, just go watch that. Vectors are pretty simple, so we're going to be using a vector instead. So anyway, let's change this to a vector. So we just need to do vector integer. We'll call this, we need to import vectors here. So include vector. So vector integer, and we'll give it a name of numbers, so the same name as the array that we had. And then we can provide a mount into there with no problems, because vectors are able to be resized. Alright, so we shouldn't have to change anything else, because vectors pretty much work the same way when it comes to accessing the elements in the vector. So everything should be good. So let's give this a try one more time. So let's run this, and hopefully it actually works. I'm such a dummy for not realizing that, but that's okay. So yeah, there we go. It says how many numbers do you want to store? Okay, so we're gonna say we want to store 6 or 5 numbers, and we'll say so it says enter number 1, and then we'll say 15. Enter number 2. We'll say 7, 45, 67, and enter number 5. We'll say 2. And there we go. So it says the number was found in index 3 and is equal to 67. So let's check index 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 67. Perfect. So the 4th number, but that's going to be index 3 and 67. So good. It's able to find the maximum. And then for the minimum, index 4 and is equal to 2. So index 4, that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that'd be the 5th number, and that's equal to 2. Awesome. So that works pretty simply. And yeah, okay, so let's run this one more time just to see how this works. So it says how many numbers do you want to store? we're going to say, we'll do 7, because we don't want to do a big number because that would take forever to enter all those numbers. So we're going to start with 100, 700, 800, 400, 200, 500, and 340. The maximum number was found in index 2 and is equal to 800. Perfect. And then the minimum number is found in index 0 is equal to 100. Exactly. Perfect. So anyway, that's pretty much it for that program. Hopefully you found that pretty easy to follow. And if you have any questions about what I did here, you can ask in the comment section below, or you can join our Discord server and ask questions there. So let's move on to the second practice thing now. So this would be the time to seconds program. So create a program that asks the user for the amount of years, days, hours, minutes, and seconds, and then just translate that amount into seconds. So that should be pretty easy. All we need to do is convert years, days, hours, and minutes into seconds, and then report the final amount of seconds all added together. Alright, so now I suggest pausing the video and give this program a try, and yeah, and then come back. Alright, so let's get started here. I commented this out here so we can just get that out of the way, and let's start from up here so we can start from the top. It's better for me. And what we need to do first is ask for the days, or the years, days, hours, minutes, and seconds from the user. Okay, so let's just make a bunch of variables to store those values. So integer, years, days, hours, minutes, and oops, can't type in seconds. There we go. And we just need to ask for those one by one. So enter years, just like that, and then cin years, cout, enter days, cin days, cout, enter hour, oops, enter hours, cin hours, cout, enter minutes, cin minutes, cout, enter seconds, cin seconds. So we got all of those now. So now our job is going to be converting one by one all of these values into seconds and then adding them to the amount of seconds they provided, if they did, provide a number bigger than 0. So that should be kind of easy. So we'll just do seconds is equal to we'll start from the bottom, by the way. So we'll do seconds is equal to seconds plus, and then now let's convert minutes into seconds and then add that to the amount of seconds that we currently have. So we'll just make parentheses here for order of operations, and then minutes times, and then all we got to do is provide 60 because there's 60 seconds per minute. So if there's 2 minutes, that's going to be 2 times 60, so 120 seconds, and so on. So that's just an easy way to translate that over. So that would be for minutes. So now we'll do seconds is equal to seconds plus hours times, and then I don't know how many hours are in, or how many seconds are in an hour. So what we can do here is Google hours to seconds. There we go. So now we got this. So 1 hour is 3,600 seconds. So 3,600, and then seconds is equal to seconds plus hours, minutes, hours, days, times, and then we just need to change our unit to days right here. So days 86400, 86400, and then oops, and then finally we need to do years. So seconds plus years times, and then change this to years. So that'd be calendar year. So the interesting thing here is that there's so many seconds in a year, obviously. So it's going to be represented in scientific notation. So 3.154 times 10 to the power of 7. So you might be wondering, how do I, represent that in my program? And you just got to represent it just how I said it. So make a parentheses here, and that would be 3.154 times 10 to the power of 7. So to do that, we just do power, and then 10, and then 7. So that was just going to be equal to this. That's going to be the same thing as doing years times 3.154 times 10 to the power of 7. So that's just scientific notation, basically. Really simple. You should know that if you've taken basic math, Alright, so that should be it. Now we just need to report the amount of seconds to the user. So we'll just say, let's think here. So years So years, days, hours, hours, minutes, and seconds. In line is equal to, and then now we could report the final amount of seconds. Oh wait, this would need to be the initial amount of seconds right here, so we can change this to, let's think. So we'll just do initial seconds and just change this to initial seconds. And then we'll just do seconds is equal to seconds plus initial seconds. Okay. And what's the problem here? Oh yeah, we need to have the seconds variable. There we go. So what I just did basically is change. We added another variable called initial seconds, obviously. And then when we ask for the seconds, we're just going to store that into initial seconds. And then when we do our calculations, we're going to have the second seconds variable. And then we're going to do plus initial seconds. And then we can add all the other conversions. And then down here, we could just change this to initial seconds. And then now we could go down here and say seconds. So you'll see how that looks in a second, by the way. In a second, get it? Haha. Anyway, lame joke. So it's equal to seconds. Like that, I guess, whatever. Oh yeah, seconds. So let's give that a try. Hopefully I didn't mess that up at all. That was pretty long. And let's run this. There we go. So enter years, we'll say 5 years. Enter days, we'll say 45 days. Enter hours, we'll say 6 hours. Enter minutes, we'll say 13 minutes. And enter seconds, we'll say 5,000 seconds. And we get a problem here. The variable seconds is being used without being initialized. Okay. Oh yeah, because, okay, so that's okay. Yep. Yep. So the reason it's doing that is because we're doing seconds is equal to seconds plus initial seconds. But seconds right here is not initialized to anything by default. So we can just change this to 0 pretty much. So seconds is equal to 0 plus seconds. So that's going to initialize it for us pretty much. So now let's try running this. So enter years, we'll say 5 years. Enter days, 13 days. Enter hours, 6 hours. Enter minutes, 2 minutes. Enter seconds, 5,000 seconds. And that says 5 years, 13 days, 6 hours, 22 minutes, and 5,000 seconds is equal to 158849920 seconds. So you may think that that is a correct number, but as you can see here, this is going to be way bigger because we have 5 years, right? So this should be a really, really, really big number. And if it's not a really big number, it should at least be in scientific notation, right? But it's not. It's this number here. So the reason that is because we're working with integers here, right? So that means that when we go down here and we do 3.154 times the power of 10 times 7, or 10 to the power of 7 times years, that obviously is going to return a decimal number, you know, a really big decimal number in scientific notation. But since seconds right here is an integer, this has to be casted or converted back into an integer. Okay, so this means that we're going to cut off the end of the double here back into to make it an integer basically. So what I'm trying to say is that since this returns a double, that means that it's automatically going to be, you know, chopped off into an integer. So what we need to do basically to fix that is change this into a double so that we don't have that problem. It'll remain as a number with decimals in it, aka you know, either a decimal number or a scientific notation number. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. So let's try this again and I'll show you the difference so you can see how that looks. So enter years, we'll say 2 years. Enter days, we'll say 4 days. Enter hours, 5 hours. Enter minutes, 50 minutes. And enter seconds, 7,000 seconds. 2 years, 4 days, 5 hours, 50 minutes, and 7,000 seconds is equal to 6.34536 times 10 to the power of 7 seconds. All right, so that's good. That means that our number is able to be represented without being cut off, you know, back into an integer. So we don't have to worry about that at all. So we can just assume that is correct, but let's make sure. So we're going to run this again basically, and we can make sure this works by doing this. So we'll do 4 years, and we'll just set all of these other ones to 0, and it says 4 years is equal to 1.2616 times 10 to the power of 8. So we can go back here now and say 4, and we get 1.261 times 10 to the power of 8, exactly what we had before. So we know it pretty much. We can assume it works basically with these other numbers as well. Alright, so hopefully that all makes sense. If you have any questions about what I did for this second program here, you can ask in the comment section below, like I said before, or you can join our Discord server and ask there. So that's about it again, and so what I'm going to do is leave the code for both of these solutions in the description below so you can check it out and bookmark it in case you want to save it for some reason and come back to it later on, or you just want to see it in text form. If you have any suggestions on how to improve these videos, or suggestions for what videos to make, or maybe what challenges to do, then leave a suggestion in the Discord channel, in the suggestions channel. Alright, so yeah, that's about it. So if you like this video, leave a like if you want to see more, subscribe, and peace.